There we go.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi.
We've watched you so much. I feel like we know you, but you don't know us.
I've seen you guys in passing, but I'm usually like running in and out, with
That's
dogs.
okay.
We watched the whole session that you did with the young couple. He's a nurse and she's a student, and you talked to him about potty training and he said his grandfather came over and disrupted all of the training.
Yeah, said, well, you're not giving that dog any water.
Yeah, I remember that. Was it the Theo, I think?
Yes, Theo.
Yeah,
exactly.
I remember. Mm-hmm.
That's it. I always remember dogs' names, forget the humans.
Yeah, it's usually how I am because I'm always working with the dog.
Yeah,
I can go pretty far back in my memory for dog names, but the owners I usually forget.
It doesn't matter. You could refer to us as Ziggy.
Ziggy. Okay.
When we had our other dog several years ago, it was a Tibetan Terrier, and we used to take him to the park, and there was the same people all the time. Every night the same people would have their dogs, and we would forget their names, but we said, "Oh, that's somebody's mom." That's we know the dog's name, but we didn't know.
We all do that. Anyway, let's get down to business.
Yes, with the troublemaker.
I don't get it. I'm telling you, we are so peace loving, and our previous dog Zooey was so sweet. He did not have an aggressive bone in his body. And this little guy thinks he's Mussolini. I don't know what his story is, but I will say this, in the past few days, he seems to have gotten better.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotten better with what?
Well, two things. Number one, the potty training. We watched your video with these people, and we got very much onto a very strict schedule every 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And we're taking him out, and it's working like a charm, because here we are, 2.5 days after we watched it, and since that point, there hasn't been a single accident in the house.
Okay. Now, I'm glad to hear that video helped you out, because that's why we put up all our content. But also, what were you doing differently that you weren't doing that you learned from the video when you were having those issues?
We were taking him out less than more than 2 hours apart.
Okay.
So, I guess we had read that they could hold it for 4 hours or whatever at his age. Mm-hmm. But we never waited 4 hours, but we would wait 3 hours.
But and also the thing was, we would take him out for like a half-hour walk.
Yes.
And then he'd come in, and 5 minutes later he'd pee in the house.
Correct.
I said that he didn't understand the concept that peeing and pooping was supposed to be outside, not inside.
Correct.
So I'm sure it's, we're the ones who are wrong. What does he know? He learns from us.
Correct. So, dogs are meant to live in a home. Dogs aren't even meant to be dogs, because they were taken from, coyotes, wolves, dingoes, any kind of canine type dog that was able to be approached and domesticated and eventually shaped into what we have today. So, living within a, confined home with 4 walls or whatever actually isn't supposed to happen. He's supposed to be out peeing on grass and trees, and who cares what he pees on, right? But of course, when we live with humans, and that's we don't want the dog peeing and pooping and soiling the house, it becomes a problem. So it sounds like, what you said is correct, because currently, how old is Ziggy?
5 months.
5 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, Ziggy has the capacity to hold it up to 5 hours, right? But whenever I come into a home with a puppy or an older puppy and they're struggling with potty issues, we always go back and pretend like it's a 2-month-old puppy, and we do every 2 hours like you're currently doing. So like, let's say when you got Ziggy at 2 months, had you started that strict structure, by now you'd most likely be at that 5-hour mark. That makes sense?
We actually got him at 3 months.
Sure. So even at 3 months,
Okay,
if you would have
yeah.
started at the 2-hour mark, you would just be an hour behind.
Yeah.
So, but that's fine. I mean, so what I would do now on your current schedule is whenever we get a potty mistake, I always tell my puppy owners, note why there was a potty mistake. You waited too long. Maybe he gave a cue that he was going to use the bathroom, and instead of putting him in the kennel, maybe we ignored it. You know, so like some puppies will stand by like the front door or the back door to signal I have to potty. And the owner will just think like, well, let me finish this real quick, and then I will put you in the kennel or whatever. And during that 1 minute time frame, the puppy pees. So because this will tell us and just give us insight on where we need to tighten up on things. Because with potty training, like I wasn't potty training in a day, puppies aren't potty trained in a day. This is a process. And if you find Ziggy is doing very well on that 2-hour schedule, in 2 weeks, you could bump him to a 3-hour schedule. Okay. If you feel like he digresses and you're starting to get more potty mistakes, then you go back to the 2-hour schedule. Okay. And then we don't move forward until we see him being able to hold it for a longer interval. And then, you know, I think, you know, because with Maddie, she went over with you like the potty structure, and like instead of, if he looks like he's gonna potty, instead of taking him outside, putting him in the kennel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would just continue with that. If everything's looking good for the past 2.5 days, then it sounds like we're on the right track. Otherwise, if we see it be a potential issue, you can always just let us know, and then we'll figure out something.
Jesse, when we talk about 2-hour increments, do we talk about that from the time he comes back from his walk? For example, let's say you take him out at 10 o'clock and you take him out for a half-hour walk. So you get back at 10:30. So are we measuring the 2 hours from 10 o'clock or from 10:30?
So technically from 10:30. And if you want to be more specific, from the time that he last pottied.
Got it.
So if you know, at 10 o'clock, you go for your walk, you return at 10:30, but he peed at 10:15, right? Because that's where the time frame is starting from.
Okay.
So, and that's if you want to be really specific. Generally, we would go by the 10:30 time, right? Now that 15 minutes can make a difference, though.
Yeah.
So if we go on a 30-minute walk, for puppies, you know, in the beginning, I always stop, let them pee and poop or whatever, you know, he has to do. And then you just walk for a solid 20 minutes, right? Nonstop.
Right.
And then at the end, give another potty break. Because typically with all the activity, they'll have to go pee again. So that this way he pees just before we go back inside, and this should help alleviate, you know, like when you mentioned earlier, you'd go on a walk, he'd pee, but then when you come back, he'd pee again. That's potentially why.
Or he wouldn't pee.
Yeah, and then he wait and he come back here and he pee.
Yeah, like he had to wait till he got home to pee.
The other thing, the other thing that he does is he'll pee, and you start to take him on a walk, and he'll just sit down, and he sits down and he wants to look at everything, and he's like the mayor, you know. He wants to see what's going on, and you know, you got to pull him to get him going.
Okay, and then how often does that happen?
Every walk almost.
Okay, yeah. And then if you stop with him, what does he do?
Sits there and just looks around.
Okay, and he's on the gentle leader, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so every time he does that, for whatever reason, like he's opting not to walk, is if you stop with him to like give him a moment to rest or in a moment to like recuperate or whatever, you're actually reinforcing that behavior.
Oh, got it.
Because he goes, if I stop, you stop too. So then he's dictating the walk. I just keep walking.
Okay.
Now, what you're going to get, of course, if he's resisting, is he might pull back, and then his paws will be like this, right? Because he's trying to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
You just keep walking, and it's going to make him uncomfortable. But eventually, he's going to go like, "Well, what I'm doing isn't working," and he should start walking.
Okay. Great.
So you're not being mean, because the more you do this, it creates bigger issues. Okay, because I think you noted Ziggy has been like resource guarding, or like, is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's hard to necessarily predict when he kind of growls and snarls and gets, bitey. Sometimes he'll be laying there and you want to put him in the crate, and then he'll get, like,
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Or I don't think it's so much when we don't really try and take things away from him, but sometimes like he'll have something like he'll grab your socks or something.
Yeah.
And you want to get it away from him, and he gets all growly,
Yeah, but the thing that you should know, and I'm not making excuses, because I hate the growling and the snapping. It's not, we just can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But he never bites down.
Mm-hmm.
He will take our hand or take our arm,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't ever bite down or leave any kind of teeth marks.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But at least he's not, biting us and drawing blood, which would be reason to send him, I don't know where.
So I'll talk about that. Okay. So the way this all works is, like, let's take, for example, the stopping on the walk. It is super simple and mundane, like who really cares, right? But what happens is he doesn't see it that way, right? Like a human will say like, oh, he just doesn't want to walk anymore, right? But then if I know we have this problem, like in your case, the resource guarding, right? Is I go, when the dog decides not to walk anymore, that is a decision. And then when you comply to that decision, he learns I can control you by doing this, right?
Yeah.
Then what happens is when we got a bigger problem, like the resource guarding, right? Is in his mind, he's like, well, if I decide I don't want to walk and you comply, right? Then what makes you think that I'm going to give in here? Okay, the little things lead to bigger things.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's like toddlers.
Yes, and that's his learning capacity. Okay, I say 3 to 4 year old child. Some people say 2 to 3 year old child, but mentally he's around that age range, and he'll be at that age range forever. Okay.
Our grandchildren. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So he's a 3 to 4 year old child forever. Okay. So even when he's 5 years old, he will still be 3 to 4 years old up here. Okay. Just to make sure that's clear, because a lot of times when I talk to people, a very common like kind of argument they'll make is like, well, if I've trained the dog should choose to be a good dog, right? And dogs don't make choices like that. Okay? Dogs are not proactive like humans are. We can decide. One day I can decide, like, you know what? I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be this person, and I can strive to be that person, right? He's not going to wake up one day and go like, you know what? I've been a jerk to mom and dad, and I shouldn't growl at them. That's very disrespectful. Like I'm gonna shape up and I'm gonna just be a compliant. Okay, that's not gonna happen. So
luckily we don't have that expectation.
Good, because it's very common. Okay. So that's why you're talking to me, because when Maddie was discussing this stuff with me, I'm like, now we're starting to delve into, I don't want to say serious with the like to say like make it sound big and bad, but resource guarding. I know, like you said, he's not clamped down or punctured or anything, but we have to take into consideration that he is only 5 months.
Right.
Right. And the more he wins these battles, the more confident he becomes in the behavior, and one day it could always escalate.
Right.
Okay. So in terms of Ziggy's behavior, so we have like, the not walking, which is simple. Then we have the resource guarding, which is over like if he grabs a sock, when else do you see him resource guarding? Like, does he guard? I think you said when you're trying to move him when he's sleeping. Is that correct?
Yeah, like, or like when it's in the evening, like we've taken him out for his last walk and it's time to put him in the crate for the night. He'll resist that, you know, but what I do, and you know, I'll put my hands around him on his body and I'll say no. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very calm with him. I don't scream at him.
Mm-hmm.
And I pick him up off the ground. And I just hold him in my arms and that's it. I mean, he pretty much quiets down.
Okay. And where else are we having behavior problems? Or is that, or are those like, is that the big one? It's just like the guarding.
That's the big one. He's a shredder. He likes to like take a napkin and shred.
But that's puppy stuff.
Yeah, that stuff I don't care about. As long as it was given to him, I don't
Yes.
care about it. You know, if he wanted to take toilet paper out of the bathroom that was not given to him, I would care about that.
So what do you do when it isn't given to him? If he's in the kitchen while we're eating, we have to keep the napkins on the table because he snags them off our lap in a nanosecond.
Sure. So, so dogs kind of live in the finders, keepers, losers, reapers kind of world. Okay. So despite the fact that it's on your lap, right? He doesn't, or he's at least not respecting the fact of this is in your personal space, so therefore it's not mine. He's kind of like, oh, you got something, I want it, yoink, it's mine. And then if you try to retrieve it, even though it was your napkin, it is now his napkin, right? Is the easiest approach is always to prevent the behavior from happening, okay? The second approach would be, oh, you have an object that you're not supposed to have, that we have a command that, like I say out, some people say drop, which means release what you have and surrender it. And then once he surrenders it, it's no longer his, I can then remove it and I shouldn't see resource guarding, okay? The problem that you're gonna have is teaching a dog a formal release command takes time. And to get it to the degree that I would say it's a reliable command takes more advanced concepts, okay? So what I'm gonna do is just kind of talk to you about the options. I'm gonna give you some easy things that you can do now to see how that works for you, okay? Because there's no concrete way to really handle a situation. So I always like to give people options and then they kind of pick and choose what they're gonna do, okay? Now with Ziggy here, one just quick question is, going forward, your life with Ziggy, like, like come the spring or summertime or whatever, and things clear up, are you gonna go with Ziggy to the dog park? Are you gonna take Ziggy with you to like restaurants, or is it kind of like he's a home dog and we walk him and that's it?
No, we would take him with. And what we haven't mentioned that I think is relevant is that on February 1st, we are going to Palm Desert, California for 2 months with him.
Okay.
So he's going to go from the 47th floor of a high rise, waiting for an elevator to go potty, to an open door concept. And we have to address that issue before we leave, you know.
How so?
Well, should he still be crated? Yes, at night, I know. But
What about during the day?
during the day, if we are spending most of the time outside, which,
No, I mean, even here, honey.
oh, even here.
Right. I mean, I think we're unclear at this point. How often should he be in the crate other than to sleep at night at the age of 5 months? Should we put him in there during the day?
Oh, sure. So
We have
been.
Yeah. In my opinion, the first year of a dog's life, whether it be if you get the dog at 2 months or 3 months, or if you get the dog at a year, they're going to be kenneled overnight and when you're gone. Okay. Because for puppies, they go through a lot of developmental stages. So like, you know, he could be fine with pottying, but then like he chews up an electric wire, you know, because he's chewing, he's a puppy. So if you get him at 3 months, then technically not until he's a year and 3 months would you allow Ziggy to be free roam.
But Jesse, I think we're talking about during the day if we're home and take the example where we took him out for a half-hour walk and he's done his business and we come back to the house. Does he have to go into the crate or can he just be in the house?
Oh, that depends on whether or not he holds the bathroom.
He has been.
Yeah.
On the 2-hour schedule.
2-hour schedule, yeah. So as long as, like, let's say you do your half an hour walk, he does his potty, you bring him back inside, you start your 2-hour clock, and he does great with like maybe in an accident once every couple of weeks, you know, that's fine because it's a very small mistake percentage. But if we see the mistakes start to go up, then we go back to kennel. Right?
Okay.
So it's really just how he does because, you know, you're not always going to have him on a 2-hour schedule. It's gonna, the standard schedule for a dog is in the morning when we wake up, after we get home from work or midday, and then before bed. Okay. So dogs typically go out 3 times a day on average. So if you keep him on a 2-hour schedule and you don't advance him, Ziggy will forever be on a 2-hour schedule, right?
Got it.
And ideally, you're trying to get him on a 3 times a day schedule.
Got it.
Okay. So once you increase the hours, so like for instance, after 2 weeks of if you're doing well with the 2-hour schedule, then you'd go to a 3-hour schedule. Okay. And then see how he does, you know, for a period of time. And maybe you do it and if he's doing great, maybe you do that for 2 weeks, right? And then you decide he's been great on a 3-hour schedule for 2 weeks with minimal mistakes, like maybe just one in that time frame, then I go to 4 hours.
Got it.
Okay. And then the moment you find you hit a threshold where it's like, oh, at 4 hours, Ziggy's now having more mistakes, we go back a step. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Or we keep him at that step. And then, of course, you use your crate to close off. You know, if you know he's great for 3 hours, then I put him in the kennel for that last hour, which makes it then 4. Then I run him outside and then slowly kind of.
Okay.
There.
He jumps up a lot for like, doesn't he, honey? I mean, like when we're at the table, we're having dinner, he'll jump up and we're constantly saying to him, down, down, you know, and he jumps up on people, you know, if we're stopped and somebody's there, that he'll jump up.
Yeah, but he had, not that Jesse has to hear us arguing about this,
No,
but he hasn't been trained not to do that. The way I look at it, just telling him to stop isn't training. We need to know how to train him not to jump up on people
or during dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at what age is that appropriate?
As young as 2 months.
Got it. All right, we're way past that.
Yeah, because so dogs have a learning capacity of a 3 to 4 year old child as young as 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, they mature, you know, because humans, we're slow. You know, we're like infants to like crawling to walking to, you know, toddlers, and then we slowly, you know, but animals, they mature very quickly. So, and I'll discuss that with you as well, with like stopping, because that's essentially just stopping a behavior you don't want.
Okay.
Because there's behavior, then there's obedience. Okay. Obedience is the sit, stay, down, come, place type of stuff. Behavior is the don't jump, don't beg, don't bite, don't bark, right? It's very
The don'ts.
The don'ts, exactly. So my only thing with going to California, because I'm assuming you'll have easy access to like a yard or something. Is that's what it sounds like?
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
a house and we have a totally fenced in yard.
Okay. Is just be mindful of, I know you'll be spending a lot of time outside, or, you know, I would assume, is that if Ziggy's out with you during that time and he's pottying randomly, that could potentially set back your potty training.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I mean, The only real way around that is to, you know, structure the day out, you know, so it's not, you know, we're out with the dog for 8 hours or whatever, or trying to figure out some kind of means of, okay, before we bring him back inside from being outside for 4 hours, he's got a potty. Then when we're back inside, we go to a schedule. Okay. Now, once he's been potty trained, it doesn't matter. You know, it's like my dogs, you know, I could go on a hike with them and they're peeing and pooping on everything. And then we could do that for 3 days, and then we come back home and they go back to their potty schedule.
Huh, okay.
You know? But they were already potty trained. So once we come back, it doesn't do anything to
maybe we can structure it so that we, instead of like free reign in the backyard, maybe we can take them on a walk in the neighborhood, just like we would take them on a walk here every 2.5, 3 hours, so that he kind of is structured in the same way. And then when he's in the backyard, it's more like playtime.
Yeah, but he'll still most likely end up pottying randomly in the yard.
I see.
But it's better than nothing, you know, because if he's running in the yard and it's grass and he just decides, hey, I'm going to pee on this flower, like he's going to pee on the flower.
Yeah.
You know? But as long as he doesn't, you know, bring it inside the home, just that lack of, you know, structure, you should be fine. But that's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, we are going to have a crate there.
Okay,
for sure.
Yeah, that'll help balance things out as well. You know, because I've had clients in the past who have like easy access to a yard, you know, so they'll just like let their dog out in the morning while they're getting ready for work and then bring their dog in. But then I'm like, but you don't know when your dog peed and pooped, or if they peed or pooped while they were in the yard, because sometimes they're just running around, you know. So anytime you were to use the yard as his bathroom, just make sure to observe so you know exactly what it is that he's done, and not assume that when you let him out there that he actually did use the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the not walking stuff, with what you're doing right now currently, just keep moving, you know, and you don't have to take off running, but you know, just keep your movement. He's gonna put the resistance. I just keep moving. Don't try to coax him. Don't say, "Come on, buddy, let's go for a walk." Don't try to use food to try to get him to move forward, because he's saying, "I don't want to do this."
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So, you know, when you're walking, you know, of course, with the concrete or whatever, if he's trying to put the brakes, you know, you're gonna overpower him. And eventually he's going to learn, like, I can do this, but it's really uncomfortable. My best bet is just to walk.
Got
okay?
it.
And you don't want to give in even a little bit. Okay. Because even if you stop for 5 seconds, like he will take those 5 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. So that's an easy little fix. So when it comes to the resource guarding, currently, the simplest thing would be to trade with him. Have you done any of that, like with food or treats, if he has something?
If he has something?
Yeah, like trading with him, like let's say he has a sock, right? And then you bring him maybe a little piece of cheese, and then you present it to him, and then he smells the cheese. So in order to get the cheese, he has to release what's in his mouth.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off.
Okay. That's
now,
easy.
It doesn't teach Ziggy to not take things that aren't his. Okay. He's just learning how to give up something for something else. Okay. So when you present him with the cheese, and you know, I would suggest using high value stuff like cheese, turkey, chicken, bologna, you know, hot dog, whatever it is that you use, and not your standard dog treat. Because the reason why he's taking your sock is because it's more valuable, right? Because if he takes a sock, what happens?
He gets a treat.
He gets a treat, or you start to chase him around.
Right.
So then he thinks, oh, this is a game. When I grab this, you interact with me.
Right. Absolutely.
So the moment you were to see Ziggy take a sock and him running off with it, just go and, like, you know, have maybe a little treat bowl or something in the fridge, grab it, go to Ziggy, present it straight to the nose, okay? Don't try to show it to him. Bring it to the nose so he catches that scent, and you should see him release the object and then go for the treat, and then you would take the object and then you give him the treat, okay?
Got it.
Because if you try to take the sock from his mouth, he's going to want to guard it. because to him, he's thinking you're stealing it, when technically
Right.
he's the thief. Okay.
Got
So
it.
that's how we get things from him when he actively has it. Okay. Now, the problem with this method is if you're outside walking Ziggy and he picks up a chicken bone, that you picked up off the ground or something. Now it's like maybe you bring out a piece of cheese or a treat, and he's like, no, 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 this chicken bone's more valuable than that piece of cheese that you have, right? And then if you try to go for the bone, I anticipate he's of course he's gonna guard that as well. So what I do in those cases is if the dog does not have a formal release command, I just take my fingers like this, and I place them on the bottom of his jaw, and then press inwards and downwards. So you're folding the jowls over his teeth, so he ends up biting himself, and it becomes uncomfortable that he'll spit the object out.
Oh, I've tried to manipulate his jaw, but I never thought of doing it that way.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Okay.
you're not going for the object, you're going for the jaw.
Yeah.
Right? Because the problem is people go for the object. And when you go for the object, that makes the dog want to guard. But if I don't touch the object and I go for his jaw and he thinks he's biting himself and spits it out, we kind of work around the context of resource guarding. Okay. And I would only do this for a dog like Ziggy because he's smaller. I wouldn't suggest this for a larger dog, just so that you know. Okay. Now, the sleeping aspect of it, where you want to move him, okay, it's kind of like with some people when they're sleeping or they just wake up in the morning, they're kind of cranky, right? So if I know I have a dog that doesn't like to be moved when they're sleeping, what I would suggest is finding a means of waking him up. And you could even take a treat as he's sleeping and just put it to his nose, okay? And what's going to happen is he should wake up to the sense of what's in your hand. He'll wake up and like, oh, what's this, right? And then from there you can say like, Ziggy off, or like go to your crate, whatever it is, and he runs to his crate and you can close it, and then you would feed him the reward.
Oh, that is excellent
Okay?
advice.
So that's a workaround.
Okay.
So we're avoiding touching him. We're avoiding disturbing his sleep with just movement, because that's what's triggering the growling or whatever. Okay. But if he wakes up to something to his nose and then he goes into a mode of like, oh, I want that. And then you just direct him to what you want him to do. And then he does it. And if it's the kennel, you close the gate and you give him the treat or whatever. Or if it's to go outside for a walk, I walk him to the leash and I clip his leash on, then I give it to him. But you want him to wake up, be interested, perform the task, and then reward.
Got it.
Okay. And then whether or not he will advance past needing to have that constant like reinforcer is a variable. Okay. It's possible that you could shape the behavior so consistent if you did that like every night or every time from a nap or whatever, that over the course of time, like he'll kind of just get into this rhythm. And then like you could even cue it like Ziggy wake up or something when you bring that treat to his nose. And then dogs, even though they're sleeping, dogs are very aware. Okay. So then fast forward a year from now, you're like, Ziggy, wake up. He wakes up thinking from a year of practicing, it means, hey, I'm getting up because I'm going to get something. And then we're going to go outside for a potty break, or I'm going to go to my kennel or whatever. And then we avoid that whole concept of, or context of him being a brat when being woken up.
Right. Okay. It's great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's the easier stuff. Okay. And the answers that I'm giving you here, you may always need to do them. Does that make sense? Like you may always need to use a little piece of chicken or whatever, or cheese to wake him up and then to do all that stuff. It's nothing bad. It's just a workaround with the problem. Okay. Because I can't make Ziggy like being disturbed in the middle of his nap, but we can at least find a means of achieving what we want and avoiding the whole confrontation. Okay.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to begging at the table, this is when we're talking about the don't stuff, right? Is there's technically a couple of approaches here. The obedience approach requires more work because you have to teach Ziggy the skill of, like, for instance, going to his dog bed, but then also not leaving the dog bed while you eat your dinner, for example. Okay. So the quickest and easiest approach is really just correcting Ziggy for begging.
Okay.
So I believe you had mentioned earlier that if he started to growl, like, you would pick him up and you would tell him no. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's your form of a correction. Okay. Now, do you believe that form of correction is actually working?
Not really.
Right.
I mean, not really.
And do you know why it's not working?
I do not.
Have you ever seen another dog pick up another dog and tell them no?
No, but I remember you said that the mother dogs are not gently cooing or whatever to the babies in their litter. They're whacking them or nipping them or something when they do something wrong.
Correct.
I mean,
So
obviously we wouldn't hurt him, but
And I don't think you're going to bite him.
yeah, right. So you are correct. Dogs bite other dogs. Okay. So I'll explain just like the whole theory and everything here. But the reason why your form of correction isn't working is because really there's no aversive to it. Okay. Because one, Ziggy does not understand what no means.
Right.
And the only reason why he calms down is because you're carrying him up and you removed him from the context. Okay. So at some point he's like, all right, like, I forgot what was going on. Right.
Yeah.
So dogs are literally like a light switch. So, like, let's say Ziggy has a bone and I go to grab it. And when I go to grab it, he starts growling. But the moment I remove my hand, he doesn't care anymore. Because I'm no longer interested in his object. So it's like a light switch. When I'm interested, he's confrontational. When I'm not interested, he's not confrontational. Okay. They're not like humans where if someone took something from me, that I would hold resentment towards that person for stealing from me. Okay. Dogs don't have that little gray area.
Yeah.
So mother dogs or dogs will correct puppies very young, but as young as 3 to 4 weeks.
yeah,
Because that's when they already have the capacity to learn what they can and can't do. Okay. So Ziggy doesn't have a moral code. Okay. He doesn't understand that growling at you is like disrespectful, for example. Okay. That's something that has to be taught. Okay. And it's not so much that he knows that it's disrespectful, is that he just learns that he can't do it with you. Okay. So dogs have, can I do it? Or I'm sorry, I can do it or I can't do it. That's how their brains work. Okay. So let's say Ziggy's begging at the table. We'd want to replicate or imitate a correction that he would understand, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of choices of what you can use for correctional tools. One is what's called a pet corrector. Okay. You can get them online. Amazon sells them. It's just a can of compressed air. And it says pet corrector. And all it does is it makes a sound with the compressed air. The theory is if the dogs don't like the hissing or loud sound, that when Ziggy would start begging, you would spray this pet corrector to startle him. Okay. And potentially he goes, oh, every time I beg, this sound happens. I don't like that sound. I'm going to not beg anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the sound by itself does not work because, again, dogs don't spray cans of air at each other.
mm-hmm.
But there's an escalation to where I could spray, and when I use the pet corrector on the puppy or dog, I spray the hindquarters. Okay, so I physically I get close enough where when I spray, it makes contact with the dog's hindquarters. Okay, so again, it's just compressed air. It's not going to hurt them. But because it is compressed air, they tend to have a cooling feeling, because of the whatever's in it. And that tends to be uncomfortable for dogs. So if I were to spray on his hindquarter and he were to go and yip and run off because he's like, I don't like the way that felt, that's how that's supposed to work. Because now we have
Okay.
a physical deterrent, right? Now it's not painful, it's just weird to the dog. Okay. So if he were to run away yipping and yelping, I wouldn't console him. He's fine. He'll recover from it. But that's what makes it an aversive. Is he goes, man, I tried to beg for food. This weird feeling happened. I don't want that to happen again, so I'm not going to beg for food. Okay? Now, in a lot of cases, puppies will outgrow the pet corrector. Okay, because again, they're meant to be bitten. So then we have an escalation of aversives. So the next thing I have clients use is what's called a bonker. Did Maddie talk to you about a bonker at all?
How do you spell it?
Bonker,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Bonker, Bonker, like somebody's bonkers.
Oh yeah, got it.
Yeah, exactly. So with the bonker, it's simply a rolled up towel. Okay. And you can use a hairband or you can use rubber bands to keep its shape. And you use it to bonk the dog. Okay. Or whack them or however you want to term it. Okay. Now, this is where people get uncomfortable because people, when they correct their dog using physicality, they think that they're hitting their dog. Okay. So I was raised old school. I was spanked growing up. So someone could look at that and say, your mom hit you. Right. And I go, I guess, but I mean, it was to teach a lesson. It was to deter me from repeating a bad behavior. Right. So I don't look back and hate my mom for spanking me. I love my mom. Right. She taught me things. She taught me what not to do. And there has to be an aversive. And an aversive is meant to be unpleasant. So that's where spanking comes into play because that's unpleasant. So if I didn't do my homework, if I talk back to my mom, or if I didn't do the dishes, spank, spank, spank. Right? So it's one consequence for a multitude of behaviors. It's the same thing for dogs. So for Ziggy, if let's say Ziggy tried to mount a dog, let's say Ziggy jumped on a dog or was barking in a dog's face, bite, bite, bite. That's how they would teach Ziggy, don't do that to me or I will bite you.
Right.
Okay. They use physicality. They don't have conversations like humans do. Okay. So the bonker is our means of physicality to stop a behavior we don't want, but it's just a rolled up towel. Like you're not going to, break his ribs or anything like that.
No.
But it has to be firm in order to deter the behavior. Okay. Because, and again, people feel bad. They're like, oh, I'm going to bonk my dog. Right. And they do it very gently or softly. And I go, your dog is going to learn nothing from that correction. Okay. So I'm going to send you a few videos for you to review that show you how to make a bonker, how to use a bonker, and then you'll see a trainer actively using a bonker. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when you watch the bonker video with the trainer, he does it with considerable force. Okay. So that you can see how it's supposed to be done in order for it to be effective. Now, whether or not you do it is completely up to you. I simply give you options. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But if you
that doesn't sound bad to me. I know you're going to show us, but what size towel do you use? Like a bath size towel?
You can use one according to his size, or if you want like a bath size is fine because I know he's a smaller dog, but the fact that it's a towel, the size really doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, you'll see it, and it's literally just a rolled up towel and then like rubber bands or whatever to keep it shape. Okay.
Doesn't bother me to do that to him.
So Jesse, would you recommend doing the pet corrector first or just go right to the bonker?
I would go right to the bonker myself.
Okay.
The reason why I bring up the pet corrector as an option is because with 10 years of working with puppies, I know how the human psychology works and how people feel bad about correcting their puppy. So once they've tried all the like the nice guy stuff and they realize it doesn't work, right? Then they're like, I've tried everything. The puppy is driving me crazy. I need an answer. And I go, now you're ready for the next level.
Yeah,
Like,
we're
'cause
ready.
They feel better that they've done all the other stuff. They already feel like, okay, I tried it, it didn't work. What else is there? Okay. So if you already feel comfortable with it, you can skip the pet corrector, and they're expensive anyways. They're like 15, 20 bucks for a can of air. It's dumb. You can just go to your, to your towel closet, just grab a couple of towels out and make some bonkers. Okay. And the bonker works for anything you don't want Ziggy to do. Okay.
Including excessive barking or something like that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Don't bark. Don't beg. Don't jump. You can actually use it to correct the sock stealing. So now that's the preventative approach.
Yeah.
Okay? So the trade is if he already has the object and I just don't want to deal with his guarding behavior. Okay. So if I see I have a sock over here and I see Ziggy walking to the sock, that's when we correct. We don't wait for him to get the sock first. Okay. Now, technically, as another option, you can also correct Ziggy while he is actively in possession of a sock. Okay. And you're teaching him, if you take that object, this is going to happen. And that'll deter him from wanting to steal objects as well. Okay. Now, I will tell you with Ziggy, he is more of a defensive dog. Okay. Which means he's more willing to be confrontational back. Okay. So don't be alarmed if you correct Ziggy and you feel like he escalates a bit. Okay. And he starts growling at you, because that's what we would call protest. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in the human world, respect, we can teach respect, right? We can teach a child, respect your teachers, respect your elders, respect police officers, just naturally. Mm-hmm. And when that child comes in contact with that person for the first time, they know if I'm talking to you, I have to talk to you with respect, right? In the animal world or the dog world, respect isn't given, it's earned, okay? Including with puppies. So some puppies are very just naturally compliant. You correct them and they give in. They're like, okay, no confrontation. But then we get dogs like Ziggy who are more willing to put up a fight for something, right? That's why you got resource guarding and all that stuff. And like the whole moving when he's sleeping, that's what that is.
Is that something that he was born with? Like people have different personalities?
That's
okay.
Ziggy, okay?
Yeah.
So it's nothing that you did wrong.
Okay.
Okay. I've had people do everything by the book perfectly and their dog still has issues. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's just Ziggy's temperament. Just like with people, some people are more prone to be physically confrontational, mm-hmm. right? And other people want nothing to do with confrontation, mm-hmm. right? And yes, there's a whole nature versus nurture, mm-hmm. aspect to it. But with Ziggy, that's just Ziggy. Okay. So it's nothing you did wrong. So if you go to correct Ziggy and he becomes growly and he goes to confront you, right? And he's looking at you and he's growling at you, how do you think you would proceed at that point?
That's a hard one, because a part of me says that I need to look him in the eye and let him know
who's the boss,
that he's not the boss.
Okay.
But I don't know if that would be the absolute wrong thing to do.
So it's not that it's wrong, because by you maintaining eye contact, you're confronting him back technically.
Yes.
Right? So I'm going to tell you a story. My mom was very strict, and I talked back to my mom once.
Okay. Oh, this will be good.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
Because she deterred that behavior.
How do you think she deterred it?
She put you over her knee and whacked you on.
Close. So I believe I was about 13 years old, and being a teenager, right? I forgot what I said, but the moment it came out from out of my mouth, within a split second, right across the face. Okay, got slapped right across the face. You're not going to talk to me like that, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm sure I was grounded and all that stuff, but I distinctly remember the hand across the face because it was like that. The first and last time I spoke back to my mom. Okay.
Got it.
So and I understand, Ziggy's 5 months, but it doesn't excuse, because remember, dogs correct as young as 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Is if I correct Ziggy for begging and he comes back, he's like, hey, who do you think you are to correct me? Right? Then I correct him again, but firmer. Okay. And so what we have is a conversation. Okay. And this is what I would dub like a dominant scuffle. So when you correct Ziggy, you're saying, don't do that, right? And he says, who are you to tell me not to do that? That is now the conversation, okay? So if I correct him firmer, he could say, nope, and try to move in, then I correct him even firmer. And then he goes, bah! And he runs off. And he goes, well, I lost that battle, okay? And now I've just proved the point. If you confront me, I will confront you back, but firmer.
Right. The bonker.
Yes. Right. So I usually tell people when you make them, make a number of them, like around, 3 if so. Okay. And have them all on hand ready to go. Because it's going to be correction and you want to be able to immediately like reload and have one ready for them to see how that conversation is going to play out. Okay. Now, this is why it's best to correct firmer right off the bat. Okay. Because if you come in soft, he's definitely going to want to confront the softness, right? And now you have to overcompensate. So like my mom in that example, she could have said like, hey, you don't talk to me that way. And I probably would have just mouthed right back again. Instead, the moment that sentence came out of my mouth, the moment I ended it with that period, boom, end of conversation. Okay.
And when you correct, is it the same way that you talked about the pet corrector on the hindquarters?
Oh, you can. So with the bonker, you can correct anywhere on the body. Okay. So if you, and you can even throw it as well. Like it's also a projectile. Just be careful you don't, break a lamp or something. But yes, so anything that you want to deter, you would use that. Okay. Now, what I would suggest you don't do is for like the resource guarding. If Ziggy steals a sock and you're like, hey, don't steal that, right? And he starts growling at you. My advice would be you don't bonk him there because you've created confrontation. Okay. So then if you bonk him, and he's a small dog, like it's like, what's he gonna do? But more likely to instigate like him pushing that behavior forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So instead, I go, oh, you got a sock? Okay. I'll go just sneak over here, grab this bonker real quick, and not even warn you. Okay. Because you don't even have to warn them. You don't have to warn the dog to let them know, like, hey, what they're doing is unacceptable. Because then he thinks, crap, when I grab that sock, this towel came out of nowhere. Right?
Yeah.
People want to warn their dogs, and I tell people don't warn your dogs because that's how they eliminate behaviors. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to find yourself constantly saying no and then having to bonk them after the fact. I don't say no, I just correct them. And then they think, if I don't want to be corrected, I just don't do the behavior.
So do you use the bonker as an alternative to what you said was the trade-off of giving
Correct.
him the
Okay.
Correct. So like I said, there's never going to be a concrete answer for a situation, right? So I'm giving you options, and then you pick and choose what's going to be more effective within that context. In my opinion, debunking is more effective. So people, even as humans, we learn more from negative experiences than we do positive experiences. Right? Like there's even quotes that say like we learn more from failures than successes, right? Same thing for dogs, okay? Because no one wants to put themselves in a uncomfortable position, right? We actually want to remove ourselves from an uncomfortable position, right? So same thing for dogs. So that's why stopping things, don't steal, don't beg, don't jump, don't bark. It's easier because it's just spank, 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 spank in the dog version, right? Or bonk, 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 bonk. You don't have to teach him to learn what quiet means because that's how some trainers approach it. They go, say quiet, and when the dog's quiet, you give him a treat. It's too complicated.
Mhm.
Instead, I say when the dog barks, just correct them. And the dog
Well,
thinks.
the thing that's so great about that approach is when you think about it, the whole thing about the trade-off, first of all, you got to see the behavior, then you got to go get the treat, then you got to come back. The
Yeah.
thing about the bonker is that it's immediate,
Correct.
and you don't have to have a lot of conversation. You just have-
joined us.
Troublemaker.
He just came over.
Um, I do want to say a couple of things. Number one,
Uh-huh.
Beth and I want to thank you so much for your time. It's very generous of you. And I also want to tell you that absolutely everyone that we have dealt with at Canine Perspectives is just first class. I mean, everybody is professional and nice and responsive, and whatever you're doing, just keep it up because you deserve all the success that you should enjoy because
I appreciate
yeah.
You know why my employees are so good?
Why?
I bonk them.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of bruises on Maddie's forehead.
So we appreciate it. Thank you. I am lucky to have a team who are invested in the quality of the dogs that the care of the dogs that come in. I've had the same employees almost since opening my facility, and it's because I've educated them, and it's not other daycares. It's a whole spiel, but it's a revolving door.
Yeah.
Employees, because they're not properly educated to handle dogs and how to handle situations. Plus, the dogs aren't being corrected, so it's just a lot of just chaos and craziness, and it gets stressful. But here, because we don't allow any of that nonsense, it's actually a nice, pleasant environment where the employees want to come back and obviously continue working. But our job, of course, is to keep dogs in their homes, which is why I take this very seriously. And they understand that, they're on the same page. So I appreciate those words. It means a lot to us. Did you have any other questions or concerns?
Not for me, babe. Do you?
I don't think so. I think that's it for now. I think what we'll do from now on is just keep a running tally, like a list of things
Mhm.
when they bother us and, just
Arrange for a call.
Yeah, arrange for a call, but also get right on the bonking.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get you an email. I have a bunch of consultations booked today, so it probably won't be till later this evening.
It doesn't matter. That's fine.
But because you guys are here till the 20th, you said?
We leave February 1st.
February 1st. Okay. Yeah. If you guys are out in California, whatever, and you need, you have a question, feel free to shoot us an email. If you need to set up a call, we'll get that arranged for you. Ziggy, the good thing is he's a smaller dog, so it's easier to kind of handle. If anything gets too complicated, you just let us know, then we can see what we can do, or if we can refer you to someone if it's more urgent and you have to, address it while you're out in California. I can help you there as well. Otherwise, this should solve a bulk of your issues. Oh, you can't bonk the not walking, before I forget.
Oh, no.
No. You just keep moving.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
The bonking is for stopping active
right.
decisions. Okay.
Right. Just one quick question. Do you think that all of this will be successful in giving us a non-aggressive, loving pet?
So
person, I mean, pet.
So the way it works with dogs is, I think there's a notion that dogs are kind of like amicable creatures who like could do no wrong and stuff. But dogs think primitively. They're very primal, right? So the resource guarding is a primal behavior because I know for you, you would think like, Ziggy, it's just a sock. Like
Mhm.
we have all these toys over here for you, right?
Exactly right.
But he's not thinking that way. He's just thinking, hey, I found something and it's mine. He doesn't know that there's more socks in the world that he could chew on instead, or that you would go to the PetSmart and buy him a new toy. Like he doesn't understand those concepts, right? So what we can do is deter these responses, right? So if you teach Ziggy to not steal in the first place, well, then there's nothing to guard,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? Now, let's say Ziggy has a bone that you gave to him, right? You gave it to him. He's not going to understand that you gave it to him and that you would want it back at some point. He's just going
Right.
to think this is now mine, right? So then that's where teaching a formal release like drop comes into play, and doing the trade-off with the food. There are more advanced training techniques. This is just the simplest that is effective and should get you results, but not needing to commit to like weeks of training just so that he drops something. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
The whole sleeping thing, like again, like him not wanting to be bothered while sleeping, that's just Ziggy, But now we have a workaround. I think he's a fine dog, like he's nothing out the ordinary. Good thing is he's a small little guy, you know. But I think once you're able to start deterring these behaviors, and also that Ziggy gets a taste of his like own medicine, you're going to see a shift. Okay.
Okay.
Because right now the world is his oyster because he's not been corrected formally. Okay. So we'll see what that achieves with his personality and stuff like that. Don't worry about like screwing him up psychologically or emotionally. It's not going to happen. If anything, dogs get more screwed up because people don't correct their dogs.
Right.
Right.
Okay? Which is why I'm here.
Have you written a book?
Not yet, but I've thought about it.
And of course, you're dedicating it to your mother.
Yes. I use my mom a lot for our purposes. Yeah, for sure. I owe a lot to her.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was great.
Mm-hmm.
And we appreciate it very, very much.
You're welcome.
I look forward to the day when we can actually meet you in person.
Oh, we will one day.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
Any
Jesse.
questions, you guys reach out. We'll be here, okay?
Sounds
Okay.
great. Thanks a
Thanks.
million.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.